both super dry, and G-star jeans pulled low, revealing the Calvin Klein logo on his underpants. Cullen hated this trend, and in other circumstances would be tempted to pull the trousers up. Bain gestured at a pair of armchairs next to the sofa, so Cullen and Sharon sat down. Cullen tried to maintain eye contact with Miller's parents. He'd delivered death messages before in his career, for murders and accidents, but this was different. The parents already knew, and the case was on the fast track through the courts. It was Cullen's fault their son was dead at the age of 22. "Detective Constable Cullen was Keith's mentor during the time he worked with us," said Bain. "He was with him when he was attacked and would like to say a few words." Cullen looked up at Miller's parents. Their eyes were all over him. Derek ignored him. He pulled out a sheet of paper with some scribbled notes. He had prepared a statement with Bain's help, neither of them agreeing with the sentiments, but deeming it sufficiently sanitized. "At the time of his death, Keith was an acting DC, but he was about to be made permanent," said Cullen. "It's a demanding role, and Keith was learning to cope with the pressures. He brought many different skills and experiences to the job. Keith had a lot of exposure to senior officers in the police service and was well thought of, right to the top." Tears stung Cullen's eyes, genuine and heartfelt. Keith was also a friend. We shared a love of football, though we supported different teams. Keith asked me to go to the Hibs game against Barcelona the night before he died, but sadly neither of us could make it. Derek looked up. Miller had snuck off from a stakeout to go to the football. Derek had provided the tickets. Cullen hadn't told Bain. "Keith died in the line of duty," said Cullen, his voice wavering slightly. "He died saving the life of another potential victim of the schoolbook killer, and his sacrifice helped secure sufficient evidence to convict. I know it is scant consolation, but there are 2 parents in Glasgow who are not grieving, and 4 sets of parents who have a sense of justice being done over the capture of their daughter's killer." The Millers had stayed static throughout. Cullen took a deep breath. "I hold myself responsible for Keith's death. I was the senior officer. We were in a suspect's house. We didn't have backup, and I left Keith alone for a moment while I investigated a sound from the rear of the house. It turned out to be a hostage, who would undoubtedly have been killed. It was then I heard Keith scream. I returned to the living room and tried to help Keith, but he'd been stabbed in the stomach and was bleeding heavily." "What were Keith's last words?" said Ailsa Miller, her voice a croak. Cullen closed his eyes. "He told me to go after his attacker, who'd fled the flat." "What exactly did he say?" said Ailsa. "I think it was, 'I'll be fine, go get him, Scotty.'" In truth, there had been swear words in there. "I called D.I. Bain. He gestured to his superior officer. I told him to get an ambulance over to the property while I gave chase." He looked up at them again. "That was the last time I spoke to Keith." Ailsa Miller closed her eyes, tears sliding down her face. "Thank you." Alan Miller held her hand tight, whispered some words to her. "You're a lying bastard," said Derek. Everyone in the room looked around at the youth, now standing, eyes aflame. "I sat next to my brother at the game you said he wasn't at. Lying bastard!" Alan Miller was on his feet. "Derek, that's enough." "This prick got my brother killed." Derek stabbed a finger in the air. "He's trying to convince himself it wasn't his fault, but we all know it was. He got him killed." Alan Miller grabbed his arm and marched him out of the room, through a set of sliding doors at the far end. The others sat in stunned silence. A moment later he returned, wearing a false smile. "I'm sorry about that. This whole business has hit my son very hard. I'm sure you can understand." "Of course," said Bain. "It has affected every one of us." Alan Miller rubbed his forehead and sat down again. "Indeed." Cullen cleared his throat. He wanted to say something not on Bain's script. "I've been seeing a counsellor to help me come to terms with this. He suggested I keep in contact with you. It might be mutually beneficial." They exchanged a look before Alan Miller smiled. "Why, yes. I think that would be a good thing." Cullen already had one of his cards in his hand and put it on the coffee table in front of them. "Here you are," he said, ignoring Bain's glare. "My mobile number is on it. Call me any time if you want to talk."